The fog curled like ghostly fingers across the wet highway as the red semi-truck rumbled down the deserted road. Jack Carter squinted through the windshield, the wipers beating a steady rhythm against the drizzle. He had been driving for hours. Another long haul, another night of stale coffee and the lonely hum of tyres on asphalt. But then, something unusual made him ease off the gas. A figure stood by the roadside, barely visible through the mist. Jack leaned forward, heart instinctively tightening. It was a girl, young, maybe early 20s, wearing a tattered white wedding dress. Her bare feet sunk into the soggy grass. Her arms were wrapped around herself for warmth, and her long black hair hung in damp, tangled strands across her face. Mud streaked the once pristine gown, and small cuts lined her legs and arms. She looked like she'd stepped straight out of a nightmare. Jack's first instinct was caution. You hear stories, setups, tricks, worse. But something about the girl's posture, the way she shivered uncontrollably, head bowed low like she had no more tears left, pulled at something deep inside him. He pulled over, his tyres skidding slightly on the wet shoulder. The girl didn't move, didn't wave, didn't even look up. Jack climbed down from his rig and approached slowly, palms open. Hey, you okay, miss? He called out gently, careful not to scare her. She flinched at his voice, a small whimper escaping her chapped lips, but didn't run. Up close, Jack could see her cheeks were hollow from hunger, her lips blue from the cold. There was a bruised flower still tangled in her matted hair, like a sad memory of a day that had gone terribly wrong. Do you need help? Jack tried again, his voice softer. She finally looked up. Her eyes were wide and broken, the kind of look you only saw in people who had been through hell and weren't sure they made it back. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. She just nodded slowly, almost in shame. Jack shrugged off his heavy flannel jacket and draped it over her trembling shoulders. She clutched it tightly like a lifeline. You can ride with me, he said. Let's get you somewhere warm. He helped her into the truck's cab, bundling her in blankets he kept behind the seat. She curled into a ball against the door, silent and exhausted. Jack turned up the heater, full blast, and passed her a bottle of water and a packet of crackers. She devoured them like someone who hadn't eaten properly in days. For a few miles they drove in silence, the rain tapping steadily against the windshield. Jack didn't push her for answers. He had seen enough in life to know that sometimes silence carried more weight than words. It wasn't until they passed a small gas station that she finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. My name's Isabella, she said, each syllable brittle. Jack glanced at her, surprised. I'm Jack, he replied warmly. Nice to meet you, Isabella. She tried to smile, but it collapsed into a shudder. Jack decided to ask the gentlest question he could. You running from something? Tears welled up in her eyes but didn't fall. She nodded. My wedding? She rasped. Today. Jack tightened his grip on the steering wheel, his gut twisted. Isabella stared out the window, her breath fogging the glass. He left me at the altar, she said hoarsely, told everyone I wasn't good enough, that marrying me was a mistake. Jack shook his head, anger flaring in his chest on her behalf. But that wasn't the worst, Isabella continued, her voice cracking. He and his friends, they laughed. They made bets on how long I'd last before begging to come back. Jack felt a sick knot form in his stomach. He had no words, no comfort strong enough for betrayal that deep. I ran, Isabella said simply, ran right out of that church, through the fields, down the road. Didn't stop until I couldn't feel my feet anymore. Jack blinked hard against the sudden sting behind his eyes. This world, it can be so brutal sometimes. You didn't deserve that, he said firmly. She shrugged under the blanket. Maybe I did. Maybe I'm just broken. Jack pulled the rig into a small rest stop. A diner sat glowing in the distance, offering cheap coffee and hot meals. He killed the engine and turned toward her. "Listen to me, Isabella," he said, his voice low but strong. "The way they treated you, that says nothing about you. That's on them. Cowards hurt people because they're scared of their own emptiness." She stared at him, a flicker of something, hope, disbelief, crossing her face. "You're not broken," Jack added. "You're bruised. There's a difference." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Outside, the rain slowed to a fine mist, the morning struggling to break through the heavy clouds. Jack cracked a small smile. "Now, how about we get you some pancakes and hot chocolate? My treat." A tear finally slid down Isabella's cheek, but this time it wasn't just sorrow. It was the beginning of thawing. She nodded. Jack helped her down from the truck. She wobbled slightly, barefoot in that torn wedding dress, still clutching his oversized jacket around her thin frame. But there was a new strength in the way she held herself upright. Inside the diner, heads turned. How could they not? A trucker and a barefoot girl in a filthy bridal gown wasn't exactly something you saw every day. Jack ignored the stares. He guided her to a booth by the window and ordered 2 big breakfasts, extra syrup. Isabella hesitated when the plate arrived, as if she wasn't sure she was allowed to sit there, to eat, to exist in a place warm and safe. Jack picked up his fork and started eating like it was the most normal thing in the world. Slowly, carefully, Isabella followed. With every bite, with every stolen glance around the cozy diner, something invisible but heavy seemed to lift off her shoulders. Jack didn't ask more questions. He just let her exist. For the first time, and who knew how long, Isabella wasn't running, wasn't proving anything, wasn't apologizing for breathing. She was just there, alive, safe, and somehow that was enough for now. The diner's soft buzz wrapped around them like a blanket. Forks clinked gently against plates, the scent of fresh coffee and maple syrup filling the air. Outside, the rain had faded into a soft mist, but Isabella still clung to Jack's jacket, like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to the earth. Jack finished his pancakes and leaned back with a satisfied sigh. He wasn't in a rush. "You got somewhere to go?" he asked carefully. Isabella wiped her mouth with a napkin, eyes dropping to the cracked linoleum tabletop. She shook her head. "No, family." Another small shake. Jack exhaled slowly. He wasn't a man who made promises easily. Life had taught him most promises were cheap. But something about the broken girl across from him made him push past every learned caution. "You do now," he said quietly. Her head snapped up, disbelief written all over her dirt-smeared face. "I'm just a truck driver," Jack continued, shrugging like it was nothing. "But I know good people when I see them. You don't have to figure everything out tonight. Just don't give up yet, all right?" For the first time, Isabella smiled. Not a full smile, more like the ghost of one. But it was there, fragile and precious. Jack didn't push her to talk more. He let her finish her meal at her own pace. He even slipped a 20 to the waitress for extra blankets and socks he knew he had stashed in the back of his cab. That night, Isabella slept, curled up on the sleeper bed behind Jack's seat, wrapped in warm layers, her breathing finally deep and even. Jack leaned his forehead against the cool glass window and whispered a small prayer he hadn't said since he was a boy. Please, give her a second chance. The weeks that followed weren't easy. Jack made calls to old friends, the ones who owed him favours, the ones who still remembered how he pulled them through rough spots. A mechanic in Amarillo, a pastor's wife in Kansas City, a diner owner in Tulsa. Together, quietly, they stitched a net beneath Isabella. First, a place to stay. Then, clean clothes. Then, a job. Nothing fancy, just washing dishes at the diner. But she showed up every morning, sleeves rolled up, head high. Every night, Jack would stop by the diner after his haul and slide into a booth while she wiped tables. "You're tougher than most men I know," he'd joke, and Isabella would shake her head, laughing softly. "You're the first person who didn't look at me like trash," she'd say. She worked hard. She didn't complain. She took night classes for her GED. She volunteered at the shelter on Sundays. Jack saw the spark in her grow brighter each week, a stubborn flame refusing to be snuffed out. And she never forgot. Every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, every random Tuesday when Jack's truck would roll into town, there'd be a plate waiting for him, a scarf knitted by hand, a new thermos for his coffee. But what Isabella was building wasn't just gratitude. She was rebuilding herself. 2 years later, Jack pulled his rig into Tulsa on a rainy afternoon, not much different than the night he first found her. Except this time he wasn't alone in noticing something. The diner was decked out in twinkle lights. Balloons floated near the door. And there she stood, not in a muddy wedding dress, but in a crisp blue dress, her hair neatly braided down her back, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Jack climbed down from the cab, confused. Isabella ran to him and threw her arms around his middle, nearly knocking the wind out of him. "Jack!" She laughed and cried at the same time. "I did it!" He blinked, stunned. "What did you do, kiddo?" She pulled back, beaming. "I graduated college, full scholarship, social work degree. I'm going to help girls like me, girls who think nobody will ever show up for them." Jack wiped his eyes roughly. "Kid, I'm so damn proud of you." And then, before he could catch his breath, Isabella reached into her pocket and pulled out a small crumpled envelope. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales. And let us know in the comments where in the world you're watching from. We love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching.